And we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 33 of the FilmBrony Podcast. I am, of course, the guy that has been taking control of the show ever since 2 years ago, Nick Canino. And we would like to thank you all for coming onto the show for episode 33 of the podcast. And like always, I'm not alone on this. I've got a couple friends with me who are on the podcast as well, including one that started this whole podcast. So, gentlemen, would you like to introduce yourselves?
I'm Christian Frades. I am a voice actor, YTP editor, and eventual comic book writer on YouTube. And I'm on the autism spectrum. And the one on the right is Soren.
Hi, I basically make whatever I want, whenever I want. So.
All right, so why don't we get started with today's show, and starting with our usual thing we do, which is the Blu-ray Showcase.
All right, the Blu-ray Showcase. First up, I got this Cartoon Saloon folklore trilogy. It includes Wolfwalker, Secret of Kells, and Song of the Sea. I also got Belle.
Awesome.
Blowout.
Nice.
A Brony Tale. A Christmas Story.
Oh,
that's a classic.
Fudge.
Come and See.
Nice.
Doctor Strange and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
That's
Nice.
pretty good. When it's taken.
Yeah.
Elvis.
I love that film. I love that film.
The Eyes of Tammy Faye.
It was okay.
Fall.
Nice.
Friday Night Lights.
That's a very good film.
Ghost Town.
Hilarious film. Ricky Gervais is great in that film.
Hereafter, got this at Dollar Tree that might explain the foreign title. High Fidelity.
Awesome.
Hugo and Willy Wonka.
Nice.
At this point, I have so much time and so little Blu-rays. Wait a minute. Strike that. Reverse it. The Untouchables.
Nice.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the Donald Sutherland version. It. Lilies of the Field. Love Actually. Mallrats. The Paw Patrol movie.
You know, how is it that film turned out to be so much better, and yet the Wild House movie turned out to be one of the worst of the bunch?
Yeah, pretty ironic. Anyway,
Beats me.
Picnic at Hanging Rock. Red and Red 2. The Score. Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
Very good film.
Sound of Metal.
I love that film.
I can already see the red dot in my face all the way from Chicago. Thor Love and Thunder.
Sorry, man. I hated this movie.
Here, will this make you feel better? Top Gun Maverick.
Yes!
I love it.
Me too.
3,000 Years of Longing.
That's a good one.
The Virgin Suicides.
A classic from Sofia Coppola.
Wayne's World 1 and 2.
Swing!
Swing!
Wild at Heart.
Nice.
And last but not least, one of two Robert Zemeckis remakes of the 2020s that get too much hate, The Witches. And that's it.
All right. I got a couple of Blu-rays myself. I only have 5 Blu-rays that I have, but there are some pretty good ones I picked out. One of them, 2 of which star the late Chadwick Boseman. Rest in peace, by the way, dude.
He was legendary.
Seriously. First is one of the best breaking performances he gave out in his career, 42.
That's an underappreciated one.
I love that film.
Wiggins loved that movie.
Yes, it's a great movie. Then what I have here is one of the best films of 2018, and my favorite of the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, the first Black Panther film.
It's up there for me.
Yeah,
it's still my favorite to this day. It set the standards for what a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie can do, and how it touched upon culture and prejudice was very well done. Next is a very underappreciated Christopher Nolan film that, while not as amazing as his last film, it was still a great film regardless. Tenet.
That was my number 4 that year.
I love that movie. I really loved it. Next is a Jordan Peele masterpiece. Next is another Jordan Peele masterpiece he did. Nope.
Or Stunky could say, nope.
And then Soren just mentioned this. I saved the best for last, ladies and gentlemen. Top Gun Maverick. I saved the best for last.
Or as Hamstar would say, I'm saving the best for last.
Oh boy. That's it for the Blu-ray Showcase. Now, let's get on to today's reviews.
First up is Lyle, Crocodile, and this truly is one of the year's biggest surprises. Despite some obvious cliches, including that one neighbor character that felt kind of trite, the great cast, especially Javier Bardem and Shawn Mendes, the surprisingly great special effects, and spectacular musical numbers by the Pasek Paul crew, I'd say this is a delightful story for both kids and adults to enjoy. So check this one out when you can, and I'll give it the seal of approval.
I agree with you, Soren. I thought it was a very entertaining and surprisingly good movie. The visual effects on the Crocodile were very well done. The acting was very good, especially from Javier Bardem, who's my favorite part of the whole film, I should say. He's so good as the main character named Hector, who's Lyle's owner. He's the best thing about the film. Constance Wu was great. Winslow Fagley was great as Josh Prim, and Shawn Mendes was fantastic as the singing voice of Lyle.
Stop looking at me, Sean.
The songs were pretty. The songs were solid. The songs were really solid. I really enjoyed most of the songs throughout the whole film. The music was the rest of the music was very good. I liked the way the story was structured. The writing was solid. The directing was very good. It's very well shot, nicely edited. The only problems I did have with the film, though, is that there are a couple times where the film does have some pacing issues here and there, and it does go for those cliches that you see in other family films before, especially with what Soren just said, the neighbor. Like, how many times have we seen that in films before? Despite that, though, Lyle Crocodile is a film I surprisingly really enjoyed. It's not a masterpiece, but it is a very entertaining film that kids and adults will be able to enjoy a lot, and that's why I give Lyle Crocodile an 8 out of 10 or a B+. Very good movie.
Next up is Tar, and this is what happens when Todd Field combines 2 of my favorite films, Stephen McQueen's Shame and Whiplash, and combines it into a story about an ambitious and successful composer who slowly loses her mind as her life slowly falls apart around her. The direction and soundtrack are haunting and spellbinding, and Cate Blanchett's performance is something to behold. It's not for everyone due to its slow pace, but it's worth seeing at least once, and I'll give it the seal of cinema.
For me, I loved it. This is one of the best films I've seen this entire year. Tar yes, I do understand why this film wouldn't be for everybody. I mean, the 158-minute runtime and the slow burn pace do take some getting used to. But to me, I was surprised with how much the 158-minute runtime all of a sudden flew by for me.
When I first heard of the title, I jokingly thought it is a Scooby-Doo origin story of the Tar Monster.
Well, it's not that at all. But I will say this though. This was a great film. I really loved every single minute from scene 1 all the way to the end of the film. This movie riveted me with how many with how much it, I'm sorry. This movie riveted me with how absorbing, mesmerizing, powerful, and riveting its psychological character. Its story was, especially involving a psychological character study involving the. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that again. I'm sorry. What I really loved about Tar was the way its story was structured. I loved how the story was structured as a psychological character study involving one's power, one person's fame and fortune, especially with the power, mind, and ego they have, all of a sudden comes crashing down after a scandal that they were involved in breaks out. And by the way, Cate Blanchett was phenomenal in this movie. This is one of the best performances I've seen this entire year from an actress. She is so good as Lady Attar in the film that if she's not nominated for Best Actress, something is wrong.
In place of Galadriel, you have a ton.
Yeah. And what I really loved about this movie was that the rest of the acting was great too, including from Mark Strong, who surprisingly held a terrific American accent in the film. Julian Glover, who's great in the film too. All the acting is fantastic too. The music composed by the same conductor that composed the score for Joker was absolutely fantastic. The cinematography was fantastic. It's very well edited, very well directed, very well written. I love the way the story was structured, and on top of that, and like I said, yes, the film is slow burn. It's a slow burn pace. It is a slow paced film, but I didn't mind that because of how much I was emotionally invested in the story, and it set the tone and atmosphere of the whole film. That's why the slow burn pace worked for me. And throughout its 158-minute runtime, I was surprised, like, it flew by for me to the point where it felt like 130 minutes to me. And of course, what I really loved about this movie was like I stated before, how well detailed the story was, and how amazing, like, its ending was too. Like, seriously, this is one of the best endings I've ever seen in a movie this entire year. Overall, Tar was a masterpiece, in my opinion. It's one of the best films I've seen this entire year. It's one of the most powerful, mesmerizing, and riveting films I have seen this entire year, and I am definitely going to give, and one of the most absorbing films of the year too, I should add. And without a doubt, I am going to give Tar a 10 out of 10 or an A+.
Well deserved.
Well done, Todd Field. Well done.
My next review is not necessarily a movie, but a Disney Plus special, Werewolf by Night. There's a lot to appreciate for Michael Giacchino's directorial debut, like the black and white style, some of the gore, and a better version of Man Thing than whatever that 2005 movie was. Even if it is a tad slow with some shy effects, I'll give it the seal of accuracy. Next up is Till. This might just be one of the year's most important films about seeking justice by any means necessary and fighting racial prejudice. It's well directed, paced, and acted, but it's Danielle Deadwyler who truly makes this movie work. I'd say this is a must-see for awards season, which I'm giving the seal of cinema.
I still remember seeing this movie back in October when it first premiered in Chicago, and I still have not forgotten about this film ever since. Till is one of the most powerful films I have seen is one of the most powerful and compelling films I have seen this entire year. I mean, when I went in, I knew it was going to be good, but what I had some concerns about is that I was a little concerned that it was going to be one of those films that was just made just for the sole purpose of getting an Oscar nomination. And before you say anything in the comments, I don't mind Oscar bait movies as long as they keep me invested in the story. And thankfully, Till did just that. It kept me invested in the whole story due to how brilliantly structured it was. It's well written, well directed, well edited, well shot. The soundtrack is fantastic. It's very well paced throughout. And not only does the film have excellent production values and costume design, but the performances are absolutely terrific. Danielle Deadwyler needs to get the Best Actress nomination. She was phenomenal in this movie as Mammy Till, who's Emmett Till's mother. Seriously, the power and emotion she carried to that character felt so real, especially in this one scene, which I'm not going to give away what happens, but when it happened, I could not stop crying for 5 minutes. That's how powerful her performance was in the film. And how emotional it was too. Seriously, the emotions felt so real that I just could not stop crying for 5 minutes. Not to mention Jalen Hall. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. He was fantastic too as Emmett Till. This is a great breakthrough performance from him. This is one of the best breakthrough performances I've seen from a young actor this entire year. Haley Bennett is so good in this film. She plays such a despicable character who you hate so much, but the performance is so powerful that this is one of those characters you love to hate. Same thing with Frankie Vate. Oh wait, sorry. That's what I found really powerful about Haley Bennett in the film. And Whoopi Goldberg surprised me too in the film. She was great too as Mammy's mother, Alma.
But look, Whoopi Goldberg's on the cover of this week's TV Guide. Center Square, get it? It's Murray Wilson from Rock and Roll Dad.
Yeah. Excuse me. I really love this film, and the film has excellent production values and costume design, since it really does feel like you're back in 1955, and the ending nearly brought tears to my eyes. I mean, this is one of those movies where you hate seeing what you're seeing on screen, but the way it was presented and the way it was structured and executed makes this not only just one of the year's best movies, but one of the year's most. But I would argue it's the year's most important film. Really think about it for a second, because we've been facing a lot of problems in our society nowadays, whether it comes to like rape, especially racism. So I think it's about time that a movie like this existed and that the story like this needed to be told, because this is a perfect reminder that if we are not careful, we could be seeing. Anyway, if we are not careful, history will be doomed to repeat itself. After all, people should realize that those who don't remember the past are doomed to repeat it. And Till was a perfect reminder of that.
That reminds me of a quote from Oddworld Abe's Exodus, where Abe said,
"We have forgotten our past, and now it was costing us our future, and even our souls."
And that's honestly a funny yet truthful and powerful statement.
Thank you, Lauren Lanning.
Seriously. Anyway, yeah, I love Till. It's one of the best films. It's another film that's heading on my list of the year's best, and I'm definitely going to give. I was not expecting to give this that grade, but you know what? It fucking deserves it. Till gets another 10 out of 10 or an A+. Well done to everybody involved.
Next up is The Good Nurse, and while it isn't without its pacing issues, it's otherwise a solid thriller with some effective cinematography and music, as well as great acting from Jessica Chastain and Eddie Redmayne. I say give it at least a one-time watch on Netflix, and it gets the seal of approval.
I agree with you, Soren. It's not without its pacing issues here and there, and I do think the writing could have improved on like the dialogue a bit, but thanks to Jessica Chastain and Chastain's wonderful performance and Eddie Redmayne's menacing performance, as well as the rest of the acting from Noah Emmerich being terrific, as well as the film having great cinematography, good editing, excellent directing, a brilliantly structured story, and an ending that really made me smile a bit. I really did enjoy The Good Nurse a lot. I really enjoyed it, and I give it an 8 out of 10 or B+. I really recommend this one, especially if you love Jessica Chastain and Eddie Redmayne. Check it out.
Next, we have The Banshees of Inisherin. Inisherin, thank you. And this movie is a masterpiece if I ever saw one. Martin McDonagh gives a darkly comedic tragedy about the consequences when one long-term friend suddenly stops seeing the other. The music and cinematography are hauntingly beautiful, and the performances are stellar, especially Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson, who ought to get some recognition after this. I'd definitely say give it a watch, and I'll give this one the seal of cinema.
Donkey's ancestors in it.
This is easily one of the very best movies I have seen this entire year. In other words, it is a fucking great movie. This movie was fucking fantastic. Everything.
Donkey would say it was fucking fantastic that I got to see my ancestor.
Yes.
Or as Lowell would say, it's friggin' fantastic, bastards.
Oh my goodness. We are on a roll today. Roll today.
Yeah.
With some of the jokes we're throwing in our show. This movie was fucking fantastic. Not only has Martin McDonagh made another masterpiece, but this movie also hit me on a personal level to the point where it felt like emotional therapy for me. It's one of those films that does a fantastic job. It's what it feels like when you're facing a feud between a best friend you love and trust, and how it can destroy the friendship between both sides. So in other words, it's exploring the melancholy of friendship. Seriously, the acting was fantastic, especially from Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson, who both delivered some of the best performances of not just this entire year so far, but also of their careers too. The emotions felt so real that at times I forgot I was even watching a movie. And that's thanks to not only Martin McDonagh's like wonderful directing, but also his terrific script that he wrote for the film. I mean, what I really loved about the script he wrote for the film, since not only does he carefully balance the tone between comedy and drama successfully well as having fantastic dialogue, but the way he makes the characters feel like real people with real and raw emotions is absolutely outstanding. And because of that, this is easily one of the very best scripts he's written in a film this entire year. The story was brilliantly structured. The soundtrack was fantastic, and so was the film's cinematography and editing. It's very well paced throughout. There are a lot of funny moments throughout the whole film. That's what I loved about this film, is that it does not shy away from being funny as well. Like, I don't want to spoil what happens, but there's this one scene. And I'm not going to say what happens, and you guys got to see for yourself. But let's just say it's involving a wine. If you guys know which one I'm talking about, then you'll probably get it. And speaking of which, Barry Keoghan was absolutely fantastic in this film too. This is a fantastic writer performance from him, and not only that, this is one of those comic relief. I was a bit worried that he was going to be one of those comic relief characters that was there just for the sake of it, but no. He not only had a purpose, but he felt like a real person that's out of his mind for sure, but a real person, but a character that felt real and anybody could relate to as well. And without spoiling what happens, this has one of the best endings I've ever seen in a movie this entire year. And one more thing I want to mention, and why I feel this is one of the year's very best, was the way it handled its subject of depression.
Depression is a very serious illness, Dwight.
Yeah, really, exactly. And the way this movie handled the subject of depression was very well executed, and it not only felt real, but it hit me on a more personal level, since, I got to take my hat off for a bit and just talk about a little something personal and why this movie really hit me on such a level. I was going through the same dark phase since like 2019, and it's just actually since 2017, especially with not only like all the internet drama that was going on at the time, but what was happening with my family as well. And there were times I just felt like I felt so depressed and thinking that I was in this type of dark cloud where nobody was there, that I felt like I really felt like I was ready to take my own life.
My gosh. Depression, isn't that just a fancy word for feeling bummed out? Dwight, you ignorant slut.
Yeah, I mean, that's why this movie hit me on a more personal level, since that's why this movie really hit me on a more personal level with the way it handled its subject, and the way, especially with Brendan Gleeson's character, whom you don't like what he's doing to himself at first, but you understand why he's like this, and like I said, he was suffering through depression, and I can't really blame him. I hate what he's doing to himself for sure, but this is something I can relate to a lot, because that was like how I was for the past few years, and seeing that portrayed on screen so well really hit me on a more personal level, and that's why it felt like emotional therapy for me. So, Martin McDonagh, I really got to tip my hat off to you, man. I've really got to tip my hat off to you with this one, because you made a movie that not only moved me, but also you made a movie that not only made me relate to this character, but really moved me like no other film did this year, other than another film we're going to talk about in a little bit. But that's besides my point. Seriously, hats off to you, Martin McDonagh. This is the Banshees of Inisherin is not only my favorite movie from Martin McDonagh, but it's also one of the most powerful, riveting, emotional, entertaining, and moving films I have seen this entire year. Seriously, if you're a huge fan of Martin McDonagh, this is a must-watch. This is a must-watch. It's easily one of the year's very, very best movies, and I am definitely going to give the Banshees of Inisherin a 10 out of 10 or an A+. Thank you so much, Martin McDonagh. Thank you.
Up next, though, is the latest installment in this ever-dying DCEU, Black Adam.
Oh.
This isn't necessarily the best of these films, as it did suffer from some sluggish pacing, as well as some shy CG action sequences that range from pretty fun to overcompensating on the editing and slow motion, and a pretty weak villain. Nevertheless, The Rock did a fine job as a title character, and the Justice Society was fun to hang out with as well. I can see why this is one of the more polarizing DC films, but I say see it at least once to judge for yourself, and I'll give it the seal of approval.
I could not stand this movie. I really could not stand it. I mean, this was just a painful. This was a really painful film to watch. Look, I'm not kidding when I say this. That this may rank up there as Justice League and Suicide Squad. Not the Suicide Squad with James directed by James Gunn, but the one directed by David Ayer, as being one of the very worst DCEU films I have ever seen.
We prefer calling it Studio Squad.
Yeah. Studio Squad. Even despite the acting, shit. Sorry about that. Crap. Hold on, let me. Crapola. Hold on. Even despite the acting, especially from Dwayne Johnson and Pierce Brosnan being good, especially in the film having Lauren Bau's good musical score, good cinematography, this movie was an uneven train wreck. And this shows why the DCEU is just a point. It's just a really bad universe at this point. I mean, they made a couple good movies like Wonder Woman in 2017, Shazam, and last year with the Suicide Squad. But honestly, I have not been a fan of most of their movies ever since. And this might be up there with some of the worst of the worst. Also, not only were the action sequences, also I really was not a fan of the action sequences, and that's due to one huge problem with the film: the quick cut edits. Seriously, what the fuck is it with action movies this year relying too much on quick cut edits? First Jurassic World Dominion, then the Russo brothers' blunder, The Gray Man, and now this? I mean, just, oh my god! Like, I don't know what is it with this year. I don't know what it is this year with action movies relying too much on quick cut edits, but I'm getting sick of it. I am getting sick of it at this point. If you're going to use quick cut edits, use it sparingly. And also,
or as Strungbed would say, "Oh, the cheat. I don't know whether to puke or have a seizure."
Also, how the fuck did this movie cost nearly $200 million to make, yet it has one of the worst visual effects I've ever seen in a movie this entire year?
I think it's probably because of the effects being rushed.
That is inexcusable, in my opinion. That is inexcusable. And also, aside from the story being poorly structured, the script is also a mess, and same thing could be said with the directing of the film. I was very disappointed with the way it was directed, especially since the director of the film actually made some pretty solid movies, like Non-Stop and Run All Night.
His two of the better Liam Neeson thrillers.
Oh yeah, and he also did the very underrated Orphan. So I don't know what happened here. But it definitely shows with this one. It's just, this is a very badly directed movie, and it's poorly edited, poorly paced, and originally the post-credit scene was going to be my favorite thing, and was originally my favorite thing in the whole film. But then, after hearing what happened with Henry Cavill, I was like, this is pointless. This is pointless.
It's basically pointless, dude. James Gunn pretty much doing to the DCEU what Lenny did at the end of Mice and Men.
Yeah. I still love James Gunn, though.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see Guardians 3 next year, which is the only Marvel Cinematic Universe movie I'm looking forward to, I should add. Even despite this, though, I still could not stand Black Adam. It was messy, it was boring, it was inconsistent, and it was just a flat out, just a generic, cliched movie that I just could not stand. And also, one more thing. No disrespect to the actor playing the kid in the film, but he was so fucking annoying in this movie. He's supposed to be the sidekick of, like... He's supposed to be the sidekick in the film. Oh yeah. He plays Amon Tomez in the film, and a teenage kid who befriends Adam, and he was so fucking annoying that I wanted to see him kill off in the film, but unfortunately they didn't do that because the plot said so. Jerks. Yeah, it's 3 out of 10 or a D+. I really could not stand this movie. Easily one of the worst.
How about you read the comic books instead?
Yeah, really. Easily one of the worst of the DCEU, and honestly, it's heading on my list for the year's worst movies. I could not stand that. I should mention too that my battery on my phone is running low, so I'm gonna have to stop the stream. Not stop the whole stream, but I'm gonna have to cut off for a bit, and I'm gonna have to cut off for a bit and just transfer over to my computer. So,
all right, in the meantime, I got a couple movie reviews only I saw. First up is Wendell and Wild, and this is a return to form for not just director Henry Selick, but also stop-motion animation as a whole. I found myself sucked into the world of oppression and demons, and the performances are also solid too, especially Angelica Bassett. I heard some people complain that the story was a bit too complicated to follow, but I was able to follow it well. Also, it's kind of a given that the visuals are nothing so spectacular, and that alone is worth the price of admission. I'll give this one to Seal Cinema as well.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, just talked about Wendell and Wild, and now I'm going to talk about All Quiet on the Western Front. And the 1990s had Saving Private Ryan. The 2000s had Joyous Noel and Liza Iwo Jima. The 2010s had Hacksaw Ridge in 1917. And now the 2020s give us the next cinematic masterpiece about the horrors of war. I gotta give kudos to Edward Berger for taking us on the journey through World War I, as the hopes of becoming a hero slowly turned into the fears of safety. The sound design, editing, and music are all tense and cinematic, and the message is loud and clear that war is nothing more than a life-threatening waste of time. So Whatever you guys do, stop watching this podcast and see us on Netflix as soon as possible. And I'm, of course, giving this one to Seal Cinema. Next up is Armageddon time, and this movie could have been way better. It's definitely well acted, especially from Jeremy Strong, and there are some effective scenes here and there. But ultimately, this was kind of an aimless mess that claims to say a lot about racism, prejudice, and the American dream, yet doesn't really say anything at all. Plus, I found the main character extremely unlikable and uncharismatic for me to even care about him, and there are a ton of pacing issues as you feel every minute of its runtime, so I'd say skip this one and I'll give it a seal mediocrity.
I agree with some parts that I agree with some parts you said about this movie. I liked Armageddon Time, but I didn't love it. I really did not love this movie as much as I thought it would, which is pretty disappointing because I love James Gray. I love some of his previous movies he's directed, like The Lost City of Z and Ad Astra. But so, to be honest, I felt like this movie was just like fell short from being a great film, and that's due to some problems I have with that's due to a few problems I had with the film. The first being I agree with Soren, the pacing. The movie suffers through some pacing issues here and there, and while the script by James Gray was very good, especially with its dialogue, my problem with the film were like the characters. Most of the characters. The only one that really felt well developed for me was the grandfather played by Anthony Hopkins, who and Jeremy Strong's character Irving Graff, who is Paul's father, as well as Anne Hathaway's character Esther, who's Paul's mother and Aaron's daughter. I mean, Anne Hathaway, Jeremy Strong, and Anthony Hopkins characters were all well developed, and I really care for them very much. The rest of the characters, I mean, I'll say this: Banks I'm sorry, I don't know if I mispronounced. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but the kid that plays on Paul Graff, he was very good in the film, but the character, I just could not get invested in. I just had a hard time getting invested in. But he's not as bad. He's not as bad compared to like his older brother Ted, played by Ryan Sell. Again, great performance, but his character is such an unlikable douchebag, especially to his brother. Hello, Network 98. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi.
My problem with his character was that he's the same cliched brother character who's a bully to his brother that we've seen in other films before.
Stupid played out internet cliche, as Strong Bad would say.
And but my most hated character in the whole film is Topper's friend named Chad Eastman. Especially when like he is so underdeveloped in the film. He was just there just because he wants, just because I hate people who are African American and stuff, and I'm just like, really? You're gonna develop a character who hates black people, yet you don't do anything with it? Really? And like I said, I know this is covering the subject of racism, and I'm all for covering subjects like this, but I felt the story could have been a lot better. I mean, it is a well-written and well-directed film. The acting was very good, especially from Jeremy Strong, Anne Hathaway, and Anthony Hopkins, who's fantastic in the film, I should add. The soundtrack is great, and so is the film cinematography and editing. But the story was an uneven mess. And it suffers through some pacing issues here and there, and most of the characters feel underdeveloped, and I feel the script could have used some improvement on the character development, and the ending felt so rushed. Oh, and another thing I also hated about the film, the obvious political undertones. I rarely say this in movies, but with the covering like what I mean is that this is taking place before Ronald Reagan became president, and how it was like shoving all that down people's throats in the movie. I was like, come on, James Gray. Other than that, though, I do think it's a solid film, but I really do think it could have been a lot better. I'm going to have to give Armageddon Time, directed by James Gray, a 7 out of 10 or a B. It's a solid. I do think it's a solid film that's worth checking out for the performances, but for James Gray, the director of The Lost City of Z and The Immigrant and Ad Astra, I really expected more from this guy. Again, a solid movie, but not great. I'll be right back.
All right. In the meantime, I might as well talk about a couple movies. We had the Yankovic story, and this movie was a blast from start to finish. Besides Danny Radcliffe giving his all as Weird Al and the soundtrack being great, this movie pokes fun at all the Oscar biopic cliches and amps up the comedy and wackiness to 11, the type of comedy I've been missing for a long time. So if you have Roku, stream it right now, and if you don't, find a way to watch it online since this ironic parody is unironically one of the year's best, which I'm giving the seal of cinema. And now back to Nick, I guess.
My dad's calling me for some reason. And next movie I'm going to talk about.
Oh, and your reign for Armageddon time?
What?
Oh, and your reign for Armageddon time?
I did give it my rating. It was a 7 out of 10.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. My next two reviews. One is a shit horror film, and the other one is a movie that tries to cover its subject like LGBT very well, but fails to do so, and has nothing to say about it whatsoever. The first one I'm going to talk about. I'll actually talk about this one first because this came out a week before this other one that I'm going to talk about. But the movie is called My Policeman. It's based on the 2012 novel the same name, where it's set in Brighton, East Sussex, England in the 1950s, and the novel and it's about Tom Burgess. Crap. I'm sorry. This happens when I don't have anything scripted. Anyway, there we go. Anyway, the film is about Tom, a policeman in 1950s Britain who falls in love with a school teacher on the Brighton coast. However, he soon begins a passionate same-sex affair with a museum curator in spite of homosexuality being illegal at the time. And now, here's what I'll say about the film. There are some very good performances by Emma Corrin, Gina McKee, and David Dawson, who was absolutely terrific in this movie, and Linus Roach. And David Dawson, like I said before, he is fantastic as young Patrick Hazelwood, to the point where I would even argue it's one of the better breakthrough performances I've seen from an actor this entire year. The cinematography is fantastic. The musical score was great, and the film has excellent production values and costume design. But for the most part, the story is a muddled mess where it just cuts back and forth to like the 90s and the 50s. It does it back and forth, and the way it was structured and the way it was edited was an absolute mess. It reminded me of when Hillbilly Elegy did the same thing of like cutting back to like the past and present, and it just did not work. I mean, the only film that could do that well was The Godfather Part 2. Because they knew how to because Coppola knew how to transition scene. I mean, because at least Coppola knew how to transition scenes like that from the past to present.
And also Christopher Nolan's Memento.
Oh yeah, that one too. I forgot to mention. Excuse me. Yeah, with My Policeman, it just did not work here. And also, while I did mention that some of the acting was very good, most of the acting was very good, Rupert Everett was horribly wasted in this movie, and this is the second time this year that I have to mention this actor who gives out a bad performance. But I don't know what's happened to him. Harry Styles in this film is so bad in this movie. Like especially with some of the dialogue that he says in the film, I was like, are you kidding me, man? Kidding me? Like, I can't even believe he acted those lines in not only such a hilariously awful way, but with how atrocious the script was too. Like, seriously, the script was just so bad in this film. It is a mess. Aside from Harry Styles giving out one of the most laughably horrendous performances I've seen this entire year, the script is also a bad one. Like, and you know what? Before you say anything in the comments, I don't have a problem with Harry Styles. As I stated before, he was fantastic in 2017 in Dunkirk. So, but between this and Don't Worry, Darling, I'm like, what are you doing, man? It's also poorly edited, poorly directed, and by the time the film ended, I just didn't even care. And also, it just goes for those cliches that we've seen in other films before. And when I say this movie doesn't do anything involving doesn't say anything about T, I really mean it. I really mean it. Like, it tries to say something about people who are gay, yet it doesn't do anything with it, nor say anything about it whatsoever. That is the biggest reason why My Policeman frustrated me to no end. Overall, I really did not like this movie. It was generic, it was cliched, it was boring, it was forgettable, and above all, it is not worth anybody's time. I'm going to have to give My Policeman a 3 out of 10 or a D+. It is not worth your time. Unless you really want to see it for like Rupert Everett or David Dawson, I suggest you stay away from this one. And hello, I'm Nicholas Lee. Welcome to the podcast. You're just in time for the next review, which I can't believe I have to talk about this one. When will Hollywood stop? I have this question to ask. When will Hollywood stop with these cliched exorcist wannabe movies? When will they stop it with that nonsense? I think you guys know where I'm going with this. Next movie I'm going to talk about is Pray for the Devil. you know what? So, Pray for the Devil is about a nun who trains as an exorcist under the Roman Catholic Church and confronts the demonic possession. You know what? I'm just gonna get this out of the way. I'm not gonna beat around the bush with this one. This is one of the worst movies I've seen this year. How many times have we seen movies involving exorcism before? I mean, the reason it worked in The Exorcist in 1973 was because it was scary, it was unique, and it was something we'd never seen before. Now it's just all of a sudden studios are trying to cash in. For years, studios try to cash in on the film's success by throwing in their own exorcism stuff, and for some parts it did work, but for the most of it, it doesn't. And Pray for the Devil is one of the biggest examples of this. It's one of the worst movies. It is one of the worst examples of cliched exorcism movies that just does not work. I guess the only redeeming thing I found in the film was the performance of Jacqueline Byers. She plays the main character named Sister Anne, and she was hands down the best actress in the whole film. She was hands down the best actress in the whole film. She carried a lot of emotion, and she did carry a lot of emotion and power to the performance she gave, and she was the reason why this is not a flat out 0 out of 10. And the cinematography is decent too, but that's about all I have to say about the film. The rest of it, oh boy, this one was just. This one was almost just a chore to sit through. This movie just absolutely sucks ass. Remember when I stated in the invitation that the movie relied too much on jump scares just for the sake of it? Well, guess what? This movie does the same thing as well. And I counted how many jump scares there were in the film. And I counted how many jump scares there were in the film. There were under 20 jump scares throughout the entirety of its 87-minute runtime of Pray for the Devil. Under 20 jump scares, and none of it was used sparingly, because not only was it predictable, but it was also really infuriating, and it just came up as being laughable as a result of this. The story is a cliched mess. The writing is atrocious. It's poorly directed. The rest of the acting was absolutely terrible. It wastes the talents of Ben Cross, whom rest in peace, Ben Cross. Rest in peace. It's too bad. It's too bad this is the last movie he was in, because what a waste of his talent. And same thing with Virginia Madsen. Her talent was horribly wasted too. But oh my goodness, I hate picking on kid actors. I really hate picking on kid actors because I know they're trying their best, but oh my goodness. Posey Taylor as Natalie, she was terrible in this movie. She came up as being nothing more than a Linda Blair from The Exorcist wannabe. That's all she came. And I feel bad for this for the actress playing her, because I know she's a talent. I know she could be very, very talented as an actress, but this was not. This was so. I just felt this as probably one of her first movies she's done. This is not a good way to start out. And I also blame that on the script too. Like I said before, the script is atrocious, filled with horrible dialogue, bland character development, and the film relying on cliches that you've seen in other horror films before. It's also poorly edited. The musical score is trash, and the ending was an absolute dog shit. The ending was absolute dog shit. And I already mentioned this before. I already mentioned that the jump scares in the film. How many fucking times do I have to say it? Unless you build tension and use it sparingly, jump scares are not scary.
Barbarian is a positive example.
Yes. I have this question I want to ask. How is it this year that Smile turned out, despite some issues with the cliches, turned out to be a solid horror film, yet Halloween Ends and Pray for the Devil end up being some of the worst horror films I have seen this entire year? How is that even possible? And no, Nicholas Lee, I have not seen Terrifier 2 yet. I've heard of it, though. Yeah, guys, do not waste your time with Pray for the Devil. It is one of the worst movies I've seen this year, and it is one of the most boring, generic, cliched, and downright forgettable films I have seen this entire year. Without a doubt, I am giving Pray for the Devil a 1 out of 10 or a D-. This is one of the worst movies I've seen this year. It is one of the worst horror films to come out this entire year, and I do not recommend this one whatsoever. Do not watch Pray for the Devil. It is not worth your time whatsoever. Shame on you, Lionsgate. Shame on you.
Next up is a movie called Call Jane, and while this movie can feel slow and aimless at times, it's still a decent one-time watch about a woman's group fighting for abortion in the 60s. The soundtrack is fun to watch, and the performances are good as well, especially Elizabeth Banks in her best film in years, so I'll give it a seal of accuracy.
I saw Call Jane too, and yes, I did feel the ending was a bit rushed, and the movie does suffer through some pacing issues here and there as well. But thanks to its nicely structured story, a good script, excellent directing, as well as Elizabeth Banks giving out a terrific performance in the film, and Sigourney Weaver and Kate Mara also delivering some great performances, and the film having a very good soundtrack, great cinematography, and really good production values and costume design. I overall thought Call Jane was a very good film. That explores a lot about the subject of this whole thing, about the subject of the film. So I liked the film. I didn't quite love it, though. It's still a very good film that's worth checking out, though, which is why I give Call Jane an 8 out of 10 or a B+.
Next up is Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Now, I already made a video about this, so I'll keep it brief. After they decided to move on with this sequel and killing T'Challa instead of recasting him, I expected at least a masterpiece after the high standards of the last one. But this has got to be one of the lesser films of Phase 4, as there's a ton of issues I had with it. Firstly, it did not have to be nearly 3 hours long, as you can easily cut like 10 to 20 minutes here and there for better pacing. Not to mention, some of the editing needs some work, and the humor is at some of its worst and most blatant in any MCU film. It's more or less the same plot as the first movie, as in the ambiguous question of, is vibranium secret? Is it worth the risk of sharing it with the world? Also, Shuri's story arc is the exact same as Peter Parker in Far From Home and No Way Home, as she lost someone very close to her and becomes hesitant to carry the torch and feel vengeful against a certain someone until she learns that killing isn't the answer. In spite of great acting, especially from Angelica Bassett, music and production values.
Angela Bassett.
Angela Bassett, thank you. This is a case of a sequel being rushed for the sake of capitalizing on a very successful original. I'll give it the seal of accuracy because I still recommend it, but don't expect the same quality as the first Black Panther. And it's sad to report that Phase 4 ended not with a bang, but with a whimper.
I thought Black Panther Wakanda. For me, I thought Wakanda Forever was good, but not great. And I agree with you, Soren. The editing really could have been like really needed some more work, especially with as well as like the script. Like the script really juggles way too much. Unlike some subplots that go absolutely nowhere, and 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 the script relied too much having too much characters to the point where some of them don't even get their chance to shine whatsoever. Also, like I said before, I rarely complain about movies being long as they keep me invested in the story. But why the fuck did it need to be 161 minutes long? Why did it need to be that long? Especially when there are some scenes that just drag on and on and on and on. There was no reason for that. You could have just stripped the film down to like 20 minutes and it would have been a lot better. And because of that, the film really suffers with some pacing issues as a result of this. But despite this, though, I thought it was a solid movie. I like the way the story was structured for the most part. It's very well directed by Ryan Coogler. Seriously, he did a very good job with the way he directed this movie. The acting was absolutely terrific, especially from Letitia Wright, who is fantastic as Shuri in this film. Lupita Nyong'o was great too, as well as Winston Duke. But the one that surprised me the most was Angela Bassett. Seriously, what a performance she gave as Ramada. What a performance. On top of the film having good production values and costume design, excellent musical score, and great cinematography, I also really enjoyed the action sequences in the film. The action sequences were a lot of fun to watch. The way they were choreographed, directed, edited, and shot, they were very well done. And what I also really liked what I also did find good about Black Panther Wakanda Forever is that I love the different tone they took with the film by being a more mature film. Like, while also paying the legacy and respect to Chadwick Boseman. That was by far one of my favorite parts of the whole film. And the ending was a solid, and I did find the ending to be really solid too. And the film does have very good visual effects too, I should add. So overall, Wakanda Forever is good, but not great. I overall give it a 7 out of 10 or a B. I like the film. I do think it's a solid movie, but it just missed the magic. It just missed the magic and surprise that I feel the first film was well known for. And for that reason alone, that's why I liked Black Panther Wakanda Forever, but I didn't love it.
Next up is A Christmas Story Christmas. Stupid title aside, this was a decent watch. While it tries too hard to remind you about the classic original, it's still a decent sequel and definitely an improvement over that disastrous 2012 sequel. I'll give this one the seal of accuracy.
Yeah, don't even get me started on that.
Next up is Bones and All. I will say it's not for everyone since it deals with a cannibalistic romance because as we all know, hold on, let me rephrase it. It's not for everyone since it deals with a cannibalistic romance, which is in fact frowned upon in most societies.
Johnny Depp would love that reference.
But I'd say this is a well-directed balance of horror and romance, featuring solid performances from Taylor Russell and Timothy Chalamet, as well as a well-written story and dialogue, and a hot high and beautiful score from Rasner and Ross. However, there are moments of weird editing here and there, and it can be a bit slow at times. Otherwise, if you're willing to handle the themes this movie is going for, I'd say check it out at least once, and I'll give it the seal of approval.
Okay, so I watched Bones and All a couple days ago. I fucking love this movie. I mean, I loved this movie. I've been a fan of Luca Guadagnino ever since Call Me by Your Name came out, and while he did direct the disappointing Suspiria remake, I still rooted for this guy to make a good movie. And not only did he rebound from that disappointing film, but he made one of my favorite movies I have seen this entire year. Yes, it is not going to be for everyone since it is involving cannibalism, but as a romantic horror road film based on the 2015 novel of the same name, Bones and All featured such amazing performances and chemistry by Taylor Russell and Timothée Chalamet, and this is one of the most disturbing yet powerful, intriguing, absorbing, and mesmerizing films I have seen this entire year. I mean, what I also loved about the story was the way it was structured. Yes, while it's frightening to see the two main characters as cannibals at first, what I loved about this movie was how it explores why they ended up being like that. I don't want to give away what happens, but how it was executed was nothing short of terrific, and that's due to the script. That's due to the terrific script. Seriously, the way the script was written for the film was absolutely terrific. The characters, especially with the characters and the dialogue, which were both absolutely fantastic. And also, Mark Rylance. How awesome was he in this movie? Seriously, like, how awesome was Mark Rylance in this movie, Soren?
Yeah, really. I gotta say, this has gotta be one of the best years of his career, especially since from last year.
Yeah, really. I mean, his performance, his character is such a fucking asshole. But this is one of those characters this is one of those times.
Crap.
Can you hear me?
Hearing that again? Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so sorry about that. My computer has been so slow today, especially with the internet. So please bear with me, guys. Anyway, Mark Rylance, his character is such a fucking lunatic and an asshole. But this is one of those times where because of how powerful his performance was, this is one of those characters you love to hate. And what also blew me away about the film was the use of practical effects. The fact they used prosthetics to make it seem like the two main characters are eating people was absolutely fantastic. It is sometimes unsettling and hard to watch at times due to how gory and graphic it was, which I can understand why this wouldn't be a film for everybody. But I could not help but be in awe when I saw the amount of practical effects used for the film. Make it seem like they're actually eating humans. And by the time the film ended, I was left speechless. And in a good way, too. It's very well shot. The cinematography was terrific. It has an excellent musical score by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross.
They did a great score for Mank.
Yeah.
Right, and Gone Girl and Soul. It's very well edited, very well directed by Luca Guadagnino. I love the way the story was structured. And the ending, oh boy. The ending is... I know some people were split on the ending. Some loved it and some hated it. For me, I love the way it ended. This is one of my favorite endings I've seen in the movie this entire year. if I had to point out one thing I didn't like about the film is that while most of the editing was very good, there were a couple of editing choices they made in the film that came up as being very uneven at times. I agree with you on that, Soren. Despite that, though, Bones and All was fucking fantastic. I love this movie. It's one of my favorite films. It's one of the best movies I've seen this year. And I'm going to give Bones and All a 9.5 out of 10 or an A. I highly recommend this one. It's not going to be for everyone, but if you can handle the graphicness and the story of cannibalism, then you are in for one hell of an experience. Again, not for everyone, but it is a great movie. I really highly recommend checking out. Next movie I'm going to talk about is what's that?
I did.
He did the
Hannibal
slurping
Lecter's.
thing, the Hannibal slurping thing.
Oh.
Have a good
I'd
sense
also
of humor.
like your heart roasted on a spit.
Tui.
Owen, to answer your question, Network 98, I really don't think the posters were I don't really think the posters were all that bad.
Yeah, they were pretty solid.
Exactly. Next film I'm going to talk about stars Jennifer Lawrence and Brian Tyree Henry, called Causeway. It's supposed to explore it's supposed to explore the character study involving like a U.S. veterans and the traumas they faced. And I like this movie overall. I really like this one. Really like this one. Despite the ending being a bit abrupt and the film suffering through a couple pacing issues, I found Causeway to be an effective and riveting character study drama about the lingering effects of trauma when it comes to U.S. veterans, featuring Jennifer Lawrence and Brian Tyree Henry, both giving out wonderful performances. I love the way and on top of that, the story was also brilliantly structured. It's very well written, very well directed, very well shot. The musical score was very good, and it's very well edited too. So overall, I give Causeway an 8 out of 10 or a B+. I really recommend this one, especially if you want to see it just for Jennifer Lawrence and Brian Tyree Henry. If you have Apple TV Plus, this is a must-watch.
And now we get to this disaster sequel, Disenchanted. Now, the first movie was no Lion King or Beauty and the Beast, but it was a fun little romp that kind of made fun of the old Disney tropes and way better
Interesting fact, the original movie was intended to be an R-rated comedy.
Yes.
I'm serious.
And it was a fun little romp that made fun of Disney and did it way better than Frozen, I might add. But I feel like with this sequel, they become the very thing they swore to destroy. Instead of like a jab at modern Disney movies and modern Disney tropes, this is just a schlocky fairy tale straight out those DVD sequences from the 2000s. This movie just throws so much shit on screen and makes so much noise throughout as to keep the kids' eyes glued to the screen. The acting is so obnoxious. Maya Rudolph is annoying as a main villain, and even Amy Adams is trying way too hard to be cartoonishly whimsical and sinister. I mean, give her credit in The Woman in the Window. At least she was the only subtle thing in that movie. The effects are horrendous. The animals and objects from Inanimate Insanity look like something out of the Sci-Fi Channel Uncanny Valley edition. And I was most disappointed in Alan Menken's music, which is just bland and unmemorable. So, bottom line, this is the epitome of everything wrong with Disney, nostalgia-based sequels, and Hollywood as a whole. This movie is bland, annoying, obnoxious, unnecessary, pandering, and just plain horrible. Of course, I give this a seal of rage, and right now it's battling Submarine as being the worst film of 2022.
Wow. hearing how bad this one was, from hearing how bad you described it, yeah, I'm not watching it.
Thankfully, the next movie is The Menu, and this movie was a culinary masterpiece if I ever saw one. The fact that director Mike Milo's previous film was a poorly reviewed rom-com which nobody remembers, like What's Your Number, is just shocking to me because this was such a well-crafted blend of suspense and a touch of satire, and with brilliant performances, especially Ray Fiennes in the best performance in his career. The music, cinematography, and production values are all S tier, and this screenplay has got to get nominated for Best Original Screenplay because of its hypnotizing dialogue and brilliant satire on the pretentiousness of fine dining. Don't look up, cinema sins, take fucking notes. So if you haven't seen this movie, just do yourself a favor and see it ASAP, as it is a sleeper hit for a reason. I'm giving it to Seal Cinema.
I saw the film too, and I was looking forward to seeing it, not only because it had Ray Fiennes, Anya Taylor-Joy, Nicholas Hoult, and John Leguizamo in it, but the film also being a satirical take on the food industry was one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to see this movie. And after seeing The Menu, yes, and after seeing the movie a month ago with one of my best friends, I mean, holy shit, what a fucking movie this was. The Menu was one of the most powerful, gripping, intriguing, hilarious, and entertaining films I've seen this entire year. This is a movie where it does a fantastic job balancing the tone between thriller and black comedy carefully. And what I loved about this movie is how it's not afraid of pulling any punches when it comes to satirizing the food industry. It doesn't give a rat's ass if you're a food critic, a chef, or if you're involved with anything related to food. It goes after everybody in the food industry, and that's what I loved about the way it was written and the way the satire was structured. As for the performances, all the acting was fantastic, especially from Anya Taylor-Joy and Nicholas Hoult and John Leguizamo. But Ray Fiennes, what a fucking performance he gave out as the celebrity chef. What's amazing about his performance and why it's one of the best I've seen from an actor this entire year is because he's not your average ordinary chef you would see in restaurants, as well as like your average ordinary celebrity chef. No. He's a different kind of chef. A diabolical chef that you would not want to have in your restaurant. And that's what makes the writing of his character and the performance work so well. I should also mention that despite what the trailers tell you, it's not a horror film. It's really more of a thriller movie with both the satire and the black comedy added to the mix. Yet the tension in this movie worked because not only did it feel real, but you also feel the fear that the characters face in the film because something awful is going to happen to them. And it had me on the edge of my seat as a result of this. Like, what I mean is that this movie pulls no punches when it comes to the fear. Like, for a moment, like you think it was going to be something like unique, but then it pulls the rug. It pulls the rug when it comes to like taking a different approach, like with its tension. Like, holy shit. And not only was Mark Mylod's writing and directing absolutely clever, sharp, and terrific, but I absolutely love the musical score in this movie. One score involving Ray Fiennes' character had me on the edge of my seat while wondering what he was going to do to these customers. The cinematography was fantastic. It's very well edited and well paced throughout. And by the end of the film, it had to be hungry for more because it really had me hungry for more because of how much of a devilishly delicious treat the menu was. No pun intended. I highly recommend checking out the menu. It's one of the best films I've seen this entire year. This is something we don't see a lot in film. lot of in films anymore. And because of that, The Menu is one of the best movies I have seen this entire year. And of course, I'm going to give The Menu. Hold on. Of course, I'm going to give The Menu. Well done, Mark Mylod. Well done.
Next up is a movie called She Said, and while it can be a slow burn at times and it's kind of lacking in cinematic flair, it's otherwise well written and well acted, especially from Claire Mulligan and Zoe Kazan. It's also an important film detailing the takedown of Harvey Weinstein in his various sexual assaults, which ultimately jump-started the Me Too movement. I'm not really surprised that Bond considered its subject matter and that I kind of prefer films like Spotlight in terms of movies about journalism, but I'd say see this movie at least once, and I'll give it the seal of approval.
For me, I loved it. Yes, it's not quite as masterful as Spotlight or All the President's Men, but I thought it was one of the most powerful and riveting films I've seen this year. Carey Mulligan and Zoe Kazan both deliver such amazing performances, and the screenplay was absolutely fantastic. I love the way the story was structured, especially with the fact that this is based on the true story of these two women named Megan Tuhey and Jodie Cantor, who respectively follow their New York Times investigation that exposed Harvey Weinstein history of abuse and sexual misconduct against women, and how it was like structured was absolutely terrific. Not only are these two actors absolutely terrific, not only are Mulligan and Kazan absolutely terrific, but you also got terrific performances from Patricia Clarkson, Andre Baher, Jennifer, and Samantha Morton, and even Ashley Judd herself is in this movie too, and she is terrific. She is terrific in this movie. The musical score was fantastic. The cinematography was fantastic. It's very well edited, very well paced throughout. I know some people had some problem with the pacing in the film, but to me, I thought the pacing was terrific because, yeah, it's slow, but it definitely fit the tone and atmosphere of the whole film, and I thought that's what worked about the pacing for me. It's very well directed by Maria Schrader. I would say my only problem I did have with the film is that I did think it was a bit too long, and there were a couple of celebrity. There were a couple of celebrities involving Gwyneth Paltrow. I really wish they could have explored more of. I understand why they didn't want to do this, but at the same time, I mean they do show and tell a glimpse of it, but I really wish they should have showed a lot more of it. But despite that, though, I loved it. I thought She Said was a riveting movie, was a powerful and riveting movie, and I overall give She Said a 9.5 out of 10 or an A. I really loved it. It's no Spotlight, nor is it this generation's All the President's Men, but for what it stood out as, I thought She Said was a great film.
That's what she said. Next up is Devotion, and while the two main actors are good and it's well directed with some decent dogfight sequences, ultimately those flight sequences are few and far between. It's ultimately overlong and aimless, and I wouldn't blame you if you just checked your watch every 5 minutes. I say just watch Top Gun Maverick again, as this one gets a seal of accuracy.
I like Devotion. I actually, as for me, I enjoyed Devotion. I thought it was a solid war film. While the story can feel unfocused at times, and it does. Excuse me. While the story can feel unfocused at times, and it does go for those cliches that we've seen in other films before, and it does suffer through some pacing issues here and there, and that the film is a bit too long, The solid script, great directing and visual effects, excellent production values and costume design, cinematography, great musical score and action sequences, good editing, and excellent acting from Glenn Powell and Jonathan Majors, who also had great chemistry in the film, definitely helped Devotion. Definitely helped in what I consider Devotion to be a solid war movie for me. Now, before I do rate this one, I want to say this. I want to ask this question: am I the only one that finds the comparisons to Top Gun Maverick to be extremely ridiculous? I mean, yeah, it is involving like the it does have excellent flight sequence. Both of those films have excellent flight sequences. It is involving the U.S. military. It is involving the military, and both of them have Glenn Powell in it. But here's why I find this comparison to be a bit ridiculous. Because Top Gun Maverick is a fictional blockbuster movie, while Devotion is based on a true story. And that's why I find the comparisons to be a bit ridiculous. And both of these films don't even have the same timeline. They're not even the same timeline. So that's why I find those comparisons to be a bit ridiculous. Despite that, though, I still found Devotion to be a solid war movie that I'm definitely going to give a 7 out of 10 or a B2.
Next up is Disney's Strange World, and honestly, it's safe to say that this has gotta be the absolute worst year for Disney animation. Turning Red conflicted me, Lightyear depressed me, and now Strange World just frustrated me. This has gotta be some of the worst writing in any Disney animated films, filled with more cliches and tropes than you can tolerate. Concepts that just seem rushed and underdeveloped, and blank characters who you struggle to remember the name of, who just bicker and argue against one another for an hour and a half straight. The music and editing are trying way too hard to be like Star Wars, and even the world they explore isn't even that interesting. It's just a bunch of random designs and blobs that just float all over the place. Honestly, it's safe to see why Disney didn't want to promote this thing because this is just embarrassingly lame. I'm glad it's bombing at the box office, and do yourself a favor and continue not watching this movie because it's further proof that Disney magic is officially dead, and I cannot get myself to look forward for another Disney movie ever again. Well, except for Guardians 3, that looks like an emotional roller coaster. Oh, and Ant-Man 3 looks like fun too. Oh, and maybe also Indiana Jones 5 or Inside 2. Okay, I can't get myself to look forward to a non-Marvel Disney movie again. So I'm giving Strange Bore the seal of mediocrity.
Yeah, I'm with you on this, Soren. This is the first time since Frozen 2 that I have not liked a Disney animated film. Seriously, Strange World was so boring and mediocre. There are some memorable and entertaining moments here and there, and the animation was terrific, along with the voice acting, along with great voice acting from Jake Gyllenhaal and Dennis Quaid. And Henry Jackman's musical score was very, very good too. And I do like the editing transitions they made for the film, which was pretty. I thought that was pretty good. But the story felt overstuffed and forgettable, and the writing was also a mess since it contained bland characters, clunky dialogue, and it's filled with cliches that you've seen in other films before. And on top of that, it's also not that well directed. Yeah, not a terrible movie, but I found Strange World to be pretty cliched and forgettable.
I'd rather rewatch Treasure Planet.
Yeah, same here.
That's an overlooked one.
I agree. Overall, 5 out of 10 or C. Not a terrible movie, but it was just really forgettable. Honestly, I'm not surprised that it bombed at the box office. I am not surprised.
You know, the funny thing is, this is the second time in this podcast history where Shea Frillis's ranking video coincides on the same day as as the podcast, as I'm going to be ranking most of Disney animation, except for those package films from the mid to late 40s, because I don't really count them as real movies. Anyways, I have Home on the Range, Chicken Little, Strange World, Frozen 2, The Black Cauldron, Pocahontas, Frozen, Dinosaur, The Aristocats, Encanto, The Rescuers, Dumbo, Brother Bear, Oliver and Company, Lady and the Tramp, Princess and the Frog, The Jungle Book, Ryan the Last Dragon, Meet the Robinsons, Atlantis the Lost Empire, Robin Hood, Bolt, Cinderella, Fantasia 2000, Heracles, Big Hero 6, that was his mistake. I also got Soren the Stone, Sleeping Beauty, 101 Dalmatians, Zootopia, Treasure Planet, Peter Pan, The Little Mermaid, The Fox and the Hound, Ralph Breaks the Internet, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Tarzan, Rescuers Down Under, Alice in Wonderland, The Great Mouse Detective, Mulan, Tangled, Winnie the Pooh 2011, The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, Bambi, and as for my top 10, my number 10 is Lilo and Stitch. Number 9 is Pinocchio. Number 8 is Moana. Number 7, Fantasia. Number 6, Wreck-It Ralph. Number 5, Aladdin. Number 4, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Number 3, The Emperor's New Groove. Number 2, Beauty and the Beast. And number 1, The Lion King.
Fair, good ranking.
Yep. Now, if only this phone can go up. There we go. Next up is the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. While there are a couple moments where you got suspended disbelief, this was otherwise a fun side story for the Guardians that'll tide you over until the third movie next year, and I'll give it the seal of approval. Now, as for how I'd rank Phase 4, I'd have Eternals, then Black Panther Wakanda Forever, then Werewolf by Night, Black Widow, Thor Love and Thunder, Doctor Strange 2, The Guardians Holiday Special, Shang-Chi, and finally, Spider-Man No Way Home.
For me, here's how I rank it. Thor: Love and Thunder, number 7, 3 out of 10 or D+. I fucking hated this movie. This movie killed any hope I had for the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And then number 6 is Eternals. Not a terrible movie, but a really forgettable one at best. Number 5, Black Widow. Number 4, excuse me. Number 4, Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Good, but not great. Number 3, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Again, good, but not great. Number 2, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. One of the biggest highlights of Phase 4. And then number 1, my second favorite my second favorite movie of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Spider-Man No Way Home.
All right. Now as for Diary of Wimpy Kid Rodrick rules, it's more of the same. I give it the seal of mediocrity. and now for this final movie, I have to be honest. 2022 fucking sucked for movies. A number of the anticipated films failed to deliver. Some of the Oscar films range from mediocre to straight up awful, and even Disney seems to be dying. And, well, there have been some movies that really grabbed me. No movie really moved me so far, quite like the Fabelmans did. Steven Spielberg reminded me how magical movies can be, giving us an autobiographical story about how passion for film helped this main character get through a dysfunctional family. The music, cinematography, and editing all is perfect, but the performances truly sell this movie. Gabriel Labelle's performance is really sympathetic, but the supporting cast from Paul Dano, Michelle Williams, Judd Hirsch, and Seth Rogen of all people steal the show. So whatever you do, go out and see this movie and see what true cinema is, and I'm totally giving this the seal of cinema.
Oh boy. That's fine to talk about this, and by golly, Steven Spielberg, you've done it again. You've done it again, buddy. This is one of the best movies I've seen this decade. He did an incredible job making this movie. I mean, what a film. What a fucking movie. Like, this is not just one of the year's very best. This is not just one of the year's very best. Oh no. It's something more than that. It's one of the most triumphant, funniest, entertaining, extraordinary, riveting, and deeply moving films I've ever seen in my entire life. Seriously, everything in this film was an absolute masterpiece. From start to finish. From the way it was directed very well by Steven Spielberg, to the writing being absolutely fantastic, both by him and Tony Kushner, since the characters felt like real people, and the fact that it's also semi autobiographical life of like semi autobiography of Steven Spielberg's early years told through the perspective of the character Sammy Fabelman. I love the way the story was structured. The acting was fantastic. Gabriel LaBelle delivers the year's best breakthrough performance as Sammy Fabelman. The way he performed that character, was absolutely spectacular. Michelle Williams was fantastic, and same thing with Paul. Michelle Williams and Paul Dano both delivered some of the year's best performances. Same thing with Judd Hirsch, who was absolutely terrific in this movie, even though he's not in the film that much. Seth Rogen was fantastic too. Julia Butters, who was also in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, was fantastic as Reggie Fabelman, who's the first younger sister of Sammy. All the acting was absolutely terrific. There was not one bad performance I saw throughout the whole film. The music by John Williams was fantastic. Janusz Kaminski's cinematography was absolutely fantastic. The editing was fantastic. It's very well paced throughout a 150-minute run time. The film also has excellent production values and costume design. And it's also very funny. Like when I say the film is very funny, like the film has some fantastic humor in it. Like the way the humor was set up throughout the whole film was not only clever, but also very, very funny as well. And on top of that, it's also a fantastic love letter to movies and anybody who ever wants to become a filmmaker one day. And on top of that, it also has my favorite ending I've ever seen in a movie this entire year. Seriously, that ending was absolutely terrific. And one last thing, I'm not going to spoil this. I'm not going to spoil what happens, but there's a cameo in the film towards the end of the film that amazed me to no end. When you see it, you'll know what I'm talking about. Overall, what more can I say about the Fabelmans? It's funny, it's triumphant, it's moving, it's entertaining, and it's flat out the best movie I have seen this entire year. I laughed, I cried, it really moved me. It really did move me. I rarely have seen a movie like this moved me this much since like Little Women back in 2019. And that's saying a lot. I loved it. The Fabelmans is one of my favorite films from Steven Spielberg, and it's the best movie I have seen in 2022. And without a doubt, I am giving the Fabelmans a 10 out of 10. Well done, Spielberg. Well done, Steven Spielberg.
Now, before we get to our final picks, let me just list what the National Film Registry chose this year. The all 25 films. As soon as my phone actually cooperates, there we go. We have Mardi Gras Carnival, Cab Calloway Home Movies, Cyrano de Bergerac, 1950, Charade, Scorpio Rising, Behind Every Good Man, Titicut Follies, Mingus, Mansonar, Betty Tells Her Story, Superfly, Attica, Carrie,
Yes.
Union Maids, What Is Out Stories of Our Lives, Bush Mama, The Ballad of Giorgio Cortez, Itam Hakim Hopit, Hairspray, The Little Mermaid,
Yes.
Tongues Untied, When Harry Met Sally,
Yes.
House Party, Iron
Yes.
Man, and last but not least, Pariah.
Nice.
All right, now for our final topic of the night, as we look forward to next year, which hopefully is a lot better than this year. Now, as for least anticipated films of 2023, I'm only counting films I'm 100% certain I'm going to see and review, so don't expect every bad movie to be on here. Anyways, my number 10 is a tie because Disney pretty much broke me this year. Pixar's Elemental and Disney's Wish. Number 9 is The Marvels because Captain Marvel was just, eh. Number 8, Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. Seth Rogen, please do better as a producer. Number 7, Neil Blomkamp's Gran Turismo. Hopefully way better than Demonic last year. Number 6, Coyote vs. Acme. After a slew of bad movies from Warner Animation Group, I hope they make a movie that's worth at least watching. My number 5, M. Night Shyamalan Ding Don's Knock at the Cabin. He's a hit-and-miss filmmaker, and his last movie didn't really help much. Number 4 is Fast X. After driving a car into space and taking down a satellite, I'm really feeling what they do next. My number 3, I saw the trailer in theaters and it just looks stupid. Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves.
That's so stupid.
Number 2, Kraven the Hunter. Originally, I was kind of optimistic for Sony's Spider-Man universe, but after Morbius, I can't see myself optimistic for this franchise again. My number 1, why is this movie even happening? Like, you claimed that the last movie was going to be the last one, and then out of nowhere, you just announced a 5th movie. My number 1 is After Everything. Can we all disagree that my crappy fanfics on my DBNR account are looking like Kurosawa compared to these After movies?
Yeah, really. That's so fucking stupid. The way they said it was going to be the final. They said the last one was going to be the final movie, and then all of a sudden they say, nope, it's this one. So stupid.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I only have 3 films that I'm not looking forward to seeing next year. Number 3 is Dungeons and the new Dungeons and Dragons movies. I'm sorry, but this looks stupid. And again, I'm not a fan of Hasbro's products at all, minus My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. Well, minus the series finale, but that's besides the point. Number 2, just stop it with this franchise already. Fast X or Fast and Furious 10. Honestly, after seeing the last film, Fast 9, where F9, the Fast Saga, where they put a car in space.
At this point,
That was suggested by people on social media saying, hey, Fast and Furious and Aliens.
I wouldn't be so shocked if they had a crossover with Jurassic World and/or the Minions.
Let me repeat that again. Fast and Furious in space.
Space. Did someone say space?
That's a Space Corps from Portal 2.
And I already gave Universal the next Fast and Furious movie I did, didn't I? Shit.
Yeah. Number one, I originally did have some hopes for this one because JC. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Number one, I originally was curious about this one because JC Chandler, who directed All Is Lost and A Most Violent Year, is directing this film. But after Morbius, Kraven the Hunter, I'm sorry, it's my least anticipated film of next year. So just stop. Stop.
I'll say it once, I'll say it again. The memes are the only good thing about Morbius.
Yeah. But
now for my most anticipated.
I can't watch this one again. It's impossible for me to sit through Morbius again.
Well, I'd rather watch that over Fan 4 Stick.
You know what?
Yeah.
At least Fan 4 Stick had started out promising, despite the rest of the film sucking ass. But it's just like, at least I could watch the first 10 minutes of Fan 4 Stick and not be bored by it. With Morbius, though, it's unwatchable.
Yeah.
This is the second worst comic film I've ever seen, with number one still being Catwoman.
So I just let Disney handle it.
Well, I'm afraid they would make it formulaic, jokes this, joke that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now for my most anticipated films of next year. My number 25 is going to shock you because, yes, the trailer looks stupid, but I'm going to love this movie. Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey is my number 25. Number 24 is The Little Mermaid.
Gabriella should have been the heroine.
Yeah.
Number 23 is Paul King's Wonka with Timothée Chalamet.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, as a fan of Roald Dahl and the original book, as well as the two film adaptations, I'm really optimistic to see how this one turns out. And this wouldn't be the last Roald Dahl movie to be on this list. Number 22 is Chris Stuckman's directorial debut, Selby Oaks.
I'm excited for that too.
Number 21 I have pretty low because I hear his last movie was pretty lackluster, but number 21 is Michael Mann's Ferrari.
I'm excited he's coming back.
Yeah. My number 20 is Aquaman The Lost Kingdom minus Amber Heard.
I'm sorry, but I'm not looking forward to that one.
Yeah. Number 19 is Ridley Scott's Napoleon with Joaquin Phoenix. Number 18, you were saying?
That I'm looking forward to.
Number 18, you guys remember the last time where we were actually looking forward to a Transformers movie? Number 18 is Transformers Rise of the Beasts.
It looks okay.
Number 17 is Ari Aster's Disappointment Boulevard.
Well, now it's called Bo is Afraid.
Huh. Number 16, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
I'm looking forward to that.
Number 15, Eye of a Tie, Genre Chapter 4, and Creed 3.
Nice.
Number 14, I'm not really optimistic for the DCEU's future, but I'm interested in this one because I'm really interested on how handle this obscure character. My number 14 is Blue Beetle. Number 13 is David Fincher's The Killer.
Yes, looking forward to that.
My number 12 is going to shock people. My number 12 is Barbie.
That's, you know what? I never thought I would say that, but it's one of my 25 most anticipated films of next. It's one of my 20 most anticipated films of next year.
Yeah, because Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach can't really go wrong with them.
No, absolutely not.
My number 11 is Ghostbusters Afterlife 2.
Looking forward to that.
My number 10, as for my number 10, 3 months ago, I couldn't picture myself saying this. But after seeing the trailer, after the trailer blew me away, I'm really looking forward to this one. My number 10, the Super Mario Brothers movie.
I'm looking forward to that one, too. I mean, I'm not a fan of Illumination Entertainment, but this looks like it could be a step up for them.
I liked Donkey's reaction upon the cast and him prank calling the people.
Yeah. My number 9 is Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Number 8 is Bradley Cooper's Maestro.
That I'm looking forward to. His last film, A Star Is Born, was my number 2 film of 2018.
My number 7 is a Wes Anderson double feature, Asteroid City and The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar.
That came very close to being my top 5.
My number 6, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1.
I'm looking forward to that one too.
Number 5, Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon.
Fuck yeah! Martin Scorsese, man. If it's Martin Scorsese directing this movie, give me it.
Number 4, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
I'm looking forward to that one too.
There was a Spider-Cop reference from the PS4 game.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Number 3,
I just know a lot about gaming.
Yeah.
Okay.
Number 3 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Number 2 is Denisovic's Dune Part 2. And number 1 is Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer.
Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah. Looking forward to that one too. And now, my top 10, I had a hard time deciding, so I'm just going to choose 5 films that I'm looking forward to seeing the most next year. Number 5 is Bradley Cooper's Maestro. I cannot wait to see that one, especially since his last movie, A Star Is Born, was my number 2 film of 2018. Number 4 is... Oh, yeah. Number 4 is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Number 3 is Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 2. Number 2 is Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. And my most anticipated film of next year is Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon.
And that's it for another podcast. Stay tuned for the next episode in probably late January as we cap off the rest of this year's films leading up to the top 20, 10, 15, top whatever.
Actually, I'll actually get this statement out of the way real quick. We'll actually return. We'll actually return hopefully before New Year's Eve to cap off our worst films of 2022 list before we do end up doing a best of 2022 list at the end of January.
Okay.
Yeah.
Happy Donkey Kong December.
Happy Donkey Kong December, everyone. I want to thank you all for watching today's podcast, and I want to thank Soren and Christian for coming on here once again. You guys are awesome. Be sure to subscribe to their YouTube channels. The link is in the description below. Give them the love they absolutely deserve. They are wonderful people, wonderful users. And until we meet again for episode 34 on Friday, December 30th. Hope you guys have a good Christmas, and we will see you all on Friday, December 30th for our 34th podcast, and where we present the worst films that both Soren and I saw in 2022. Hope you guys have a great one, and Merry Christmas, and we will see you all at the end of December. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.